Money isn't just a tool. It's a mirror. It reflects who you are, how you think, what you fear, and most dangerously, who controls you. Everyone wants it. Most chase it, but very few ever understand what it really is. They call it currency, success, freedom. But to Machiavelli, money was none of those things. To him, money was influence made visible. And he warned, then at least, if you don't understand how wealth is used to control, distract, and expose people, you will be enslaved by it, even as you believe you're free. Because the truth is this: most people don't serve money. They serve the illusion that having it will make them powerful. But Machiavelli saw power differently. He didn't care about riches for luxury. He cared about how money could be used to bend others without ever lifting a weapon. So, let's begin with the first rule of money Machiavelli would teach you. Not how to make it, but how money makes people move. Rule 1. Money is not power. It only reveals power. You've seen it 1,000 times. A man suddenly earns more. A woman inherits wealth. A startup raises millions. And in an instant, they start acting different, louder, arrogant, flashy, convinced that money itself has elevated them. But watch closely. The powerful ones don't change. Only the weak do. Because money doesn't create character. It magnifies it. It brings out what was already there. The coward hides behind status. The manipulator becomes generous only when it benefits them. The fool buys what he thinks intelligence looks like. So the first Machiavellian lesson is this: don't chase money to feel powerful. Chase power, discipline, strategy, reputation, and let money become the signal of your control, not the source. Otherwise, you'll get rich and still be weak. And there is nothing more pathetic than a man with money but no presence. A person who owns things but commands no respect. Machiavelli watched kings fall not from poverty, but from the illusion that their gold meant they were feared. He knew that true power is when people act differently even before you speak, not because of your wealth, but because of your mind. Rule 2, wealth without mystery is vulnerability. The modern world is obsessed with flexing. Watches, cars, designer chains, financial transparency. People show off their net worth as if it were a personality trait. But Machiavelli would see this not as power, but as exposure. Because once people know what you have, they start calculating what to take. He believed in a principle so few understand. Power is preserved through the art of concealment. You must never let your wealth speak louder than your strategy. In fact, if your wealth is the loudest thing about you, you've already lost. You've shown the world where to aim. So what does the Machiavellian do? He builds quietly. He accumulates through structure, not spectacle. And he lets his enemies believe he is always slightly less than he is. Because nothing is more dangerous than a man whose power you can't measure. Let people underestimate your money. Let them guess. Let them doubt. It's better they think you're surviving when you're secretly controlling the entire board. That's how you move undetected. That's how you strike without warning. That's how kings are built in silence. Rule 3. Never depend on the money you don't control. Here lies the trap that ruins most people. They think earning money means owning power. But if your money can be frozen, taxed away, restructured, or erased by another man's decision, you don't own wealth. You rent it. This is what Machiavelli feared more than poverty: dependence. Because the moment your survival relies on something someone else controls, you become manageable. Ask yourself, is your income built on someone else's approval? Could your lifestyle collapse with one call? Have you built your financial strength on systems that aren't yours? If yes, you're not free. You're decorated. You're wealthed, but you're still a prisoner. And the one who controls the food always controls the lion. So the Machiavellian doesn't just make money. He builds fortresses around it, multiple streams, assets no one can see, revenue flows that aren't dependent on applause, trends, or fragile networks. He builds income that survives silence and security that doesn't rely on being liked. Because once you've made someone dependent on you financially, you don't need to argue. You don't need to threaten. You don't even need to speak. They'll censor themselves. They'll apologize before you even get offended. They'll obey while calling it compromise. And that is real power. Not control through fear. Not control through fame. Control through economic gravity. The people around you orbit you, not because you force them, but because your financial structure exerts more pull than theirs. That's Machiavelli's definition of wealth. Not money, not riches, but influence that compounds even in silence. And if you don't learn how to build that, then you'll spend your entire life making money for others, living under the illusion of comfort, while someone else decides whether you rise or fall. So don't just chase income, build independence. Not the kind you post about, the kind no one can see and no one can take. That's the foundation. And if you can master that, you won't need to look powerful. You'll feel it every time you walk away without fear. Every time you say no without shaking. Every time someone realizes you're the only one in the room who doesn't need anything from anyone. That's how money works. Not through obsession, not through display, but through strategy so deep the world calls it luck. While you smile and keep building. If you want to understand how money really works, forget how to spend it. Forget how to save it. Forget how to invest it. Machiavelli would say, learn how it controls behavior. Because money isn't a resource. It's a lever, a mechanism for shaping minds, altering choices, exposing weakness. It's a mirror for your values and a magnet for your vices. And the moment you start seeing money not as a prize, but as a pressure system, everything changes. That brings us to the fourth law of Machiavellian wealth. Rule 4. Money is the most efficient test of loyalty. People say they love you. They say they believe in you. They say they'll never betray you. And then money enters the picture, and you start to see who they really are. Because unlike love, words, or intention, money makes people choose. It creates trade-offs, temptations, threats. Give someone power over your income. Watch how fast their kindness becomes conditional. Offer someone a bribe. See how quickly their loyalty becomes liquid. Or worse, watch what happens when you make money and they don't. Suddenly, your value becomes offensive. Your progress becomes suspicious. Your elevation becomes their proof that they've been left behind. Machiavelli didn't trust people who only admired him in poverty. He watched how they reacted when wealth entered the room. Did they feel joy or jealousy? Did they ask how they could help or ask what you did to deserve it? Because money doesn't change people. It exposes what they were pretending not to be. And that's why the Machiavellian never announces wealth. He uses it strategically to test character without warning. He might offer an opportunity, a position, a taste of advantage, not to bless the person, but to see how they hold power. If they become arrogant, he pulls it back. If they become clingy, he creates distance. If they become greedy, he cuts them off. This is the art of wealth as a filter, because not everyone deserves to sit near your financial fire. Some people are only loyal when they're cold. Once they're warm, they forget who built the fire at all. So, your job isn't to keep money secret. Your job is to watch what happens when people think you're rich and use their reaction as a blueprint to who they really are. Rule 5. The weak worship money. The strong control access to it. There are two kinds of people in the world. Those who want money and those who know others want it more and use that want to rule them. The weak talk about getting rich. The strong talk about building systems that make people dependent on them to survive. Machiavelli never idolized gold. He studied its influence. And he saw something most people still don't. The one who distributes the money controls the behavior of everyone who wants it. That's why kings had courtiers. That's why lords had vassals. That's why today's billionaires don't argue. They allocate. You want to become powerful. Stop chasing income like a beggar. Start thinking like a builder. Ask, how can I create something others need? How can I build a skill that turns into leverage? How can I shift from being the consumer to the source? The man who cuts checks never begs. The woman who owns the table doesn't ask for a seat. And once you control where the money flows, you don't have to manipulate. People will manipulate themselves for access to you. That's the game. Not in working harder, not in earning more, but in designing value that others orbit. And the less accessible you become, the more valuable that orbit feels. Machiavelli didn't believe in generosity for applause. He believed in calculated patronage, giving not out of kindness, but out of architecture. You give and you watch not for gratitude, but for patterns. Who becomes entitled? Who becomes loyal? Who thinks your favor is permanent? That's when you learn who your allies are and who are just opportunists, rehearsing loyalty in the hopes of future gain. And that leads to the sixth rule, Rule 6. Always let them think money is the prize. This is how you win wars without fighting. You let others chase the check, the promotion, the inheritance, the title, the trophy. And while they run, you study the terrain. You build quiet influence. You pay attention to silence. You move slowly, steadily, without celebrating small wins or blinking at petty losses. Because the true Machiavellian knows money is the bait. The real prize is power. Let them celebrate their raise. You focus on owning the system that writes the paychecks. Let them fight over percentages. You stay focused on the positioning. Let them spend years building careers. You build dependency, the one thing that makes people serve you long after the contract ends because money runs out. But debt of value, social, emotional, psychological, lasts a lifetime. The wise don't get rich to be admired. They get rich to build options, to walk away from what others crawl toward, to say no while others beg for yes. Machiavelli would never waste time flexing wealth. He'd sit in a room, watch who moves when money is mentioned, and then decide who's useful, who's dangerous, and who's predictable. That's real control. Not from noise, not from greed, but from understanding how money reveals what people hide. And once you master that, you won't just make money. You'll master the machine behind it, and you'll never chase again. To those who don't understand the nature of money, it appears to be everything. But to those who truly grasp it, money is nothing but a lever that only works if people believe in the illusion behind it. And that illusion, it isn't wealth, it's security. Because money at its root doesn't promise power. It promises safety. Safety from discomfort, from instability, from the unknown. Machiavelli knew this well. The most loyal servants aren't the ones who are paid the most. They're the ones who fear what life would be without you. That's why the seventh law of Machiavellian wealth is this, Rule 7. Use money to create comfort, then control the fear of losing it. People don't work hard for money. They work hard to not lose the life money gives them. Once someone gets used to a certain income, lifestyle, reputation, they become emotionally tied to it. Their identity fuses with what their money allows them to access. You give someone just enough comfort, just enough status, just enough visibility, and then watch what happens when they feel it slipping. They'll compromise. They'll overextend. They'll self-censor. They'll obey. This is not cruelty. It's structure. It's understanding how economic anxiety shapes decisions far more than logic ever will. Machiavelli would use this not to exploit, but to position. He'd never threaten someone directly. That's too obvious. He'd simply let them feel the edges of discomfort. He'd delay a payment, withdraw favor, redirect attention elsewhere, make them wonder, not panic, just wonder if they've lost their standing. And in that subtle uncertainty, people reveal how deeply they're tethered to their comfort. Because here's the Machiavellian truth. Most people will do anything to avoid going backwards. Not because they're greedy, but because they've tied their self-worth to their standard of living. So the game is not to give people money. It's to give them an identity that money sustains. Then sit back and observe how far they'll go to preserve it. This is how empires were maintained. Not with blood, with salaries, with ceremonies, with symbols of privilege that could be taken away at any moment. Because when you give someone comfort that feels earned but remains fragile, you control them without ever raising your voice. Now, let's move into even darker waters. Rule 8. The rich are not respected. They're measured. The world has been sold a lie. That wealth guarantees admiration. That people will treat you better the more you show them your status. But Makaveli saw through that. He knew that when you walk into a room and flaunt your wealth, you're not impressing people. You're inviting them to calculate. They measure what you have, what you wasted, what you lack in taste or restraint, what it would take to take your place. The truth is, wealth attracts admiration only from those who are beneath you, from those who want what you have. But the powerful, they don't admire your lifestyle. They measure your moves. So when you start operating from a place of insecurity, when your goal becomes looking rich instead of moving wisely, you invite predators. People who smile at your success while studying your weaknesses. People who will use your appearance of power against you. That's why Machiavelli would say, never show the world how much you need their admiration. They'll use it to trap you. So here's how the Machiavellian displays wealth. He doesn't. He demonstrates discipline, not dollars. Precision, not purchases. Influence, not indulgence. He may own everything, but you'll never know. And that's what gives him his edge. Because when no one can see the full extent of your empire, no one can calculate how to breach it. The quiet rich man, he's dangerous. Then, at least. Because he never needed your validation, and he doesn't fear your judgment, which leads to the most psychologically dominant move of all. Rule 9, become unshakable without it. This is where everything changes. Most people are terrified of losing money because it would mean losing their identity. But the Machiavellian masters the one state most fear, non-attachment. He earns money. He uses money. He multiplies money. But he never lets money become him. Because the most powerful message you can send in any room, business, politics, war, or love, is this: I can walk away and you can't. That single fact rewrites every interaction. It makes people chase you. Not because you're richer, but because you're free. You don't need the deal. Don't need the spotlight. You don't need to prove that you belong, because you know that even if the money disappeared, you'd rebuild it. Not from luck, not from begging, but from the same architecture that made you dangerous in the first place. Self-control, awareness, leverage, patience. This is how money works. It isn't random. It isn't mystical. It isn't spiritual. It's a machine. And the ones who master it are the ones who stop chasing it emotionally and start using it like a strategist. Quiet, surgical, unattached, unapologetic, unreachable by manipulation. That's when the world turns. Not when you get rich, but when you become the force that decides who else does. And when you reach that level, money isn't the goal anymore. It becomes what it was always meant to be. An extension of your mind. Not your master, not your identity, but a mirror. One that reflects not what you have, but who you've become. To truly master money in the Machiavellian sense, you must stop treating it like a finish line. Because money isn't an achievement, it's a weapon. And like any weapon, its value lies not in having it, but in how precisely you wield it. That brings us to the 10th law of real financial power. Rule 10. He who controls the flow controls the frame. Machiavelli never trusted appearances. He knew power doesn't lie with the man who holds the treasure. It lies with the man who decides where it flows. In the modern world, that means this. You can be rich and still be powerless. You can be wealthy and still be replaceable. But if you control the distribution of value, the attention of others bends around you. Not because they love you, not because they admire you, but because they need you. This is the power of positioning. You don't want to be the richest in the room. You want to be the one who signs the checks, sets the rules, decides the budget, or directs the spotlight. Machiavelli understood that if you're the dispenser, people will forgive, flatter, obey, even fear you. Because when your hand is tied to their livelihood, you never need to threaten. Your silence becomes a signal. Your pause becomes pressure. Your absence becomes punishment. This is why kings didn't just hoard gold. They built dependencies. Not because they needed servants, but because they understood a fundamental law of power. People don't follow wealth. They follow the source of it. And that source must always appear limited, mysterious, and capricious. You don't give everyone access. You don't explain how you earned it. You let them guess, wonder, worry. Because uncertainty makes loyalty automatic. They won't risk offending you, not because you're scary, but because they're afraid of losing access to something they don't know how to replace. That's not just financial leverage. That's behavioral control. And it leads to the next level of wealth architecture. Rule 11. Never teach them the system. Let them depend on the outcome. In today's world, everyone wants to be a guru, to flaunt their blueprint, sell their methods, package their success as a tutorial. But the Machiavellian never reveals the full system. He lets people benefit from the results, but never understand the process. Because once they know the system, they can replicate it. And once they can replicate it, they no longer need you. So what do you do instead? You give just enough to keep them engaged. You give value, but not structure. You give results, but not replicability. This is how old empires worked. The elite families didn't just build wealth. They built secrecy. They taught their children how to manage it, but they never taught the masses how to replicate it. Because the more mysterious your success becomes, the more mythic your image becomes. And that image is worth more than the currency itself. It becomes capital, not financial, but psychological. People will trust your guidance, echo your words, obey your strategy, not because they understand it, but because it works. And once they believe in your results more than they believe in their own instincts, you've taken control of their financial narrative. That's how you stop being a source of money and start being a source of meaning. And once they see you that way, they'll never dare compete. They'll only seek to stay close. That's how you become irreplaceable. Rule 12. When you give, attach invisible strings. Machiavelli understood generosity differently from the rest of the world. Where others saw giving as kindness, he saw it as leverage. He didn't give to be liked. He gave to create obligation. Because the truth about human nature is this: people rarely forget their pain, but they feel forever bound by unexpected help. And when you give in a way that feels rare, targeted, and generous, people will tie their self-worth to the moment you help them. They won't say it out loud, but deep down they'll feel a private debt. That's how alliances are forged. Not with blood oaths, but with strategic charity. The key, though, is this: never announce it. Never expect gratitude. Never repeat the favor unless the power dynamic stays intact. Your help must feel both exceptional and non-recurring. That makes it sacred. And people protect what they feel they might not receive again. You don't want to be seen as generous. You want to be seen as irreplaceable during a moment of crisis. That's when guilt, loyalty, and quiet submission are born. Not out of manipulation, but out of memory. And once someone starts navigating their decisions through the lens of what they owe you, you no longer need to lead. They will follow on their own. Machiavelli called this quiet dominance, the ability to engineer the emotional economy around you, not through force, but through unspoken obligation. And that brings us to the final evolution. Rule 13. Build a life where money is present but not loud. This is what separates the truly powerful from the rich. The rich talk about money. The powerful don't need to. They live in rooms where wealth is the foundation, not the topic. They surround themselves with people who understand value instinctively, not emotionally. They've gone beyond the chase. They've arrived at equilibrium, where money is not their identity, but their instrument. And that's the end game. You don't want to be the one always talking about income, taxes, deals. You want to be the one who sits silently in the meeting, says little, signs the check, and walks out while everyone else is still debating. You want to walk through life unbothered by fluctuation because you know you have more than you show. You own more than you explain. You influence more than you'll ever need to prove. That's how money works for the Machiavellian. It's not loud. It's not frantic. It's not desperate. It's just present, like a shadow behind every move, reminding the world that your power isn't in your possessions. It's in your structure. Your restraint and the silence no one can decode.